IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I'm Shrey Khanna and I'm joined by Arjun Gargeyas, who is a research analyst at the Takshashila Institution. The Quad Summit, which was held in September last year, saw leaders of all four countries coming together to announce their intentions of cooperating in diverse domains. This resulted in the formation of various working groups, with each having their own set of issues to tackle. The current working groups, they range from infrastructure to cybersecurity to climate change to COVID-19 cooperation. Now, one of the interesting group that was formulated was one on biotechnology, with Quad signaling the intentions to collaborate in the field. For the Takshashila Institution, Arjun Gargeyas, along with Ruturaj Govaikar, they have been looking at this specifically, and they're shortly coming out with a document detailing the potential areas of biotech for the Quad 2 partnership. So today we have Arjun to talk about this. Welcome, Arjun.
Hey Shrey, good to be here.
So I'll start by asking you about why broadly biotech is an area of cooperation for Quad. To the Quad, it sees this an economically or strategically beneficial area to collaborate in, because it was the concern with China's rise and China's behavior which had prompted Quad to, the reinvigoration of Quad in 2017. And now with this summit in 2021 in September, we see so many working groups coming up. Now, in this context, is biotech as an area of cooperation? So, strategic logic to it, or are the present circumstances regarding the pandemic which has made them take up the issue of biotech cooperation?
Yeah, so I think when they actually started the summit, and actually when the Quad was first formulated, it was more or less kind of a counterbalancing alliance to China and the Indo-Pacific. But now it has moved way beyond that, and I think it's moved towards a more economic cooperation and in various fields. And like you mentioned, right, there are so many working groups now ranging from climate change to COVID-19 cooperation and stuff like that. So, in the fact sheet, it was actually released by the White House. The fact sheet actually says that the Quad will monitor trends in critical and emerging technologies, starting with advanced biotech, including synthetic biology, genome editing, and biomanufacturing. And they also say that they will identify related opportunities for any sort of cooperation. And this actually kind of signals the intent to develop biotechnology as one of their primary focus areas. And that is something that we need to look at now. So, emerging applications of life science technologies are kind of gaining traction because of their economic and strategic benefits, as you mentioned, right? So, it is also the whole economic benefit aspect which is bringing together these four countries. And COVID-19 and other, diseases, potential diseases in the future, actually have made the strategic need for investment in these health security measures very, very critical. And applications of biotech are like essential for this, especially in the fields of bioenergy or consumer products or nutritional securities. These all serve as kind of levers of economic growth. And especially you're leveraging the rich biodiversity, human resources, and what all the technical expertise that the Quad can together combine have. So they kind of help in furthering the national interests of all the four countries, as well as help in the overall development of the biotech field. And this is what we think is the main reason for those four countries to come together, especially in this field. And that's why we have been looking at potential tools and technologies which could actually kind of benefit the economy, help in a shift towards biotechnology based research, and kind of tackle some of the pressing concerns which are facing the world, like health security and finding alternatives to traditional sources of energy and stuff like that. So that is what we think is the primary reason why Quad has listed biotech as one of their potential areas of collaboration. And that's why we have been trying to figure out where they can do it in the field.
Interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about particular biotechnology initiatives or areas in our discussion, but I want to first talk about this issue of COVID-19 pandemic. So there is all issue of vaccine diplomacy, the disparity that is evident for all to see. So what is the potential for Quad countries to tackle future pandemics and engage more in the ongoing vaccine development and research, and to make sure that vaccine disparity it can be countered?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely that. I mean, COVID-19, I think, has to be one of the primary focus for why they've chosen this field as a potential collaborative field. And we think that all four countries can come together and help in kind of figuring out using biological data to help research in future outbreaks of pandemic. So what we're suggesting is kind of a pandemic research hub wherein all four countries are coming together to engage in extensive research on potential outbreaks in the future. And why this is very important is because the four countries together kind of house 1.8 billion people. That's almost like quarter of the world's population. And if any infectious disease kind of pops up in any of these countries, they can actually they have the capacity or the capability to spread to the entire world. And that is why we think that they can come together in researching about these potential outbreaks. And why they can come together and what are their strengths is because they're all have several prestigious universities who are kind of very, very well versed in high tech medical and tech research. So they also have the presence of pharma and vaccine manufacturers are there in almost every country of the alliance, and a large number of student population. I mean, like there are so many students across these four countries who are working on various issues like public health and other health related topics. And there's a strong pool of talented personnel already available for these four countries to leverage to tackle any sort of future pandemic. That is something we are hoping that they would focus on, which would kind of come at the intersection of both COVID-19 cooperation and biotech too. And one more area is, of course, vaccines. As you said, right, vaccine diplomacy has become a very major talking point during the pandemic. And what we think is that these four countries together can actually help in providing vaccines to almost all major countries in the world because their exports have been on the rise. And we know how India is actually a very big vaccine manufacturer, and the ability to finance these vaccines can actually help build relationships with different countries again through again what we now call as vaccine diplomacy. And the thing is, these four countries are already producing WHO approved vaccines. They also demonstrate a capability to manufacture these vaccines at a rapid pace and for the global use. And they are also engaged in research and creating indigenous vaccines for a wide variety of diseases. So that is something we're hoping that they would tackle. I mean, they have given vaccine cooperation as one of their major goals. So if they plan to kind of leverage vaccines and strategic advantages that vaccines bring in the current political climate, so they kind of look at like a supply chain across four countries in the research and development and manufacturing of vaccines.
Yeah, right. Because vaccine diplomacy can be a very effective tool or a tangible for Quad cooperation. All the reasons that you cited, and also because of this, in the Indo-Pacific countries, they are taking Chinese vaccines. And when I study these countries, there is that suspicions of Chinese-made vaccines, made in China tech. So people are hesitant to take those vaccines. So that soft power that Western vaccines have, or for that example, Indian vaccine like AstraZeneca and the Covaxin has, it's there to take advantage of. Uh, Now, also another interesting area in which Quad is focusing is the climate change. And climate change is particularly, as you all know, that it's an issue that requires urgent action. Particularly, India's own neighbors, and even in southern India and eastern India, it's going to be a problem as well. So then the Indo-Pacific countries like Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, they are going to massively affected by the change that is going to happen. So, do you see any scope for the Quad working together? I mean, they have said that they are going to focus on it. So, what are the kind of bio-based solution that can be, used to tackle the climate crisis, especially in the background of the Quad convergence?
Yeah, I mean, climate change is a very big deal right now, and we can see that from the COP26, which was held last year, right? So there were a bunch of commitments being made by different countries and how to reduce their emissions, how to kind of create different alternative sources of energy and other ways of kind of reducing their carbon footprint. So we were looking at kind of biotech based solutions wherein they can use for mitigating climate change, especially in the current crisis. So one thing we could focus on is something about sustainable agriculture. So sustainable agriculture is something that we could actually promote. The Quad as a whole could promote, because we know that agricultural practices have been contributing to climate change, and in turn can also be affected by the extreme weather events, which are like a byproduct of climate change itself. So we see that US, India, and even Australia have like vast areas of land under cultivation, and they are some of the top countries when it comes to agriculture and animal husbandry. So climate change can actually have a very big impact on the food production, and that is why we see that biotech based solutions and bio based solutions can be developed by these four countries to maintain food security. This can be in the form of, let's say, food, alternative food, right? So we know that how the meat industry and the dairy industry have been like major contributors to climate change, and how eating these heavy protein filled meats and rearing animals for that actually has increased the carbon footprint. Now if we can kind of develop alternative foods which are in lessening the carbon footprint and actually emitting less greenhouse gases while uh, compared to that of the meat industry, it can be something which we can look at. So that is something where we can see these four countries potentially playing a role. And the other thing is, again, animal husbandry and the way we kind of rear animals and the way we kind of utilize the rich biodiversity that each of the country has to offer. So that is something that we can always use. And with the combined prowess of the quad state, which can lead to new plant and animal varieties, and which uses fewer polluting practices and withstand extreme weather events. So anything like that would actually help mitigate climate change as well as promote the use of bio-based solutions. So crops requiring less fertilizers and water, or even animals which are less susceptible to infectious diseases, can be something that can be looked at from the broad lens of tackling climate change as well as promoting bio-based solutions.
One thing I would like to add is that on climate change there is a difference in opinion or position between India and the Western countries, and if you Japan as well. Our positions on Indian position on climate change is far more closer to China than Quad countries. And if through Quad, and one of the issue is the transfer of technology for making the mitigation of climate change happen. If through Quad we can convergence and these solutions they can happen, then it will be really cool way to tackle climate change as well as further interest as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
definitely. That's always there. I mean, this whole divide between developing and developed countries with regard to climate change, right? And now that India and US are on the same team with respect to Quad, this climate financing, which is big deal, and why developing countries are asking for funds or from these Western countries for them to meet their climate goals, can actually be achieved. So I guess that's in that way, on the broad lens of climate change, I guess it would work.
Yeah. So now we are going to take a short break, and we will come back and we'll talk about other potential areas of Quad cooperation in biotech.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. Ken Niti completes 200 episodes. Rajiv Mishra, Nikhil Chopra and Rajkumar Sharma discuss the final test match between India and South Africa. They also talk about whether or not Virat will return as captain. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita dig into Apple's $3 trillion market cap, and Bezos' Chirag Din uncle look for New Year's Eve. On Raw and Organic, Kunal talks to pole fitness trainer and flexibility coach Joanna Michelle. On Pesa Vesa, Anupam finds out how REITs are beneficial from Vinod Rohira. He's the CEO of Mindspace Business Park REIT. And on Filter Coffee, Karthik talks to sports journalist Pradeep Magazine about his new book, Not Just Cricket. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. We really do appreciate the word of mouth. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you're listening to us on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. And we are also on YouTube. On YouTube, you can check out our various channels on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome back. We are talking about Quad and the cooperation of biotechnology. So, Arjun, you talked about climate change and the COVID-19 cooperation on making the vaccine available and the vaccine development and research. So, what are the other areas of potential collaboration that you see that are happening? And because biotech has gained a lot of importance in recent years, so how the Quad can work together in these emerging areas?
Yeah, I mean, other than the whole health and climate aspect, we can actually look at these particular areas of biotechnology, something like gene editing, right? So, gene editing has become a very prominent feature in many countries right now. And we can see how gene editing can be used for the benefit and positive of society, and where the quad can actually play a major role in that way. So, especially the most feasible application of gene editing is kind of the treatment of diseases through the correction of genomes. So, that would be very helpful in kind of protecting the future generations. So, that this research would actually help, and collaborative research would always improve the efficiency and the efficacy of these tools. And also how genetically modified crops, right, are becoming a major aspect in one's food security. So we do not know when these climate related disasters might occur, which would actually kind of lead to lesser food production, and how genetically modified crops could actually evade that and kind of have like a circumvention around these potential disasters which might occur. So creation of drought and flood resistant variety of crops and fruits and vegetables can actually grow even with extreme weather events which are linked to global warming. There's also the use of genetically modified bacteria to tackle oil spills, and in the process of bioremediation, that is a kind of treating industrial waste. So these are some places where they can kind of use genetically gene editing and gene editing tools like CRISPR for better uses and positive uses of society. So that is something which the quad can actually work on. And the fact that US, Australia, and Japan have already passed legislation regulating the use of gene editing, especially in plants. And US has taken a more lenient stance on it and kind of excluded GMOs, that's the genetically modified versions of plants, from regulatory oversight. So they are looking at potential applications of gene editing in plants, animals, and humans. And that is why it makes sense for all these countries to come together in furthering this research. And the fact that we have so much biodiversity in just these four countries, if you consider US, Australia, and India and Japan, so that would kind of, you can harness that to identify the targets for gene editing and kind of create trials across various climates and topographies. So that is something that we can look forward to. So other than that, I guess there is always synthetic biology, computational biology. So computational biology is basically building data models with biological data for helping other pharma companies in creating fast and efficient drug discovery methods, and other tools for better preparedness to future public health threats. And there is also this whole concept of epidemic intelligence agencies, which can be developed across the four Quad countries, which can use and utilize the benefits of computational biology models and data models and tools, so that they can tailor their responses to disease outbreaks in a much more calculated way. So these are just some of the places where we think that the Quad has potential for collaboration. So there will definitely be more and more which might come up. But currently, we think that these are some places where they have tangible comparative advantages, and that's where they can actually make a massive difference. So, yeah.
Arjun, when Quad was conceptualized first in 2007 and then in 2017, the idea was of a quadrilateral security dialogue involving these four countries with the, in the backdrop of China's rise and its assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific. And many analysts, I read, they are of view that by venturing into all this biotech and climate change and everything, they see that it's like a watering down of the main purpose of Quad, which was to make sure a favorable balance exists in Indo-Pacific, or the China is not able to control the Indo-Pacific, hegemonize it. So, do you think that this cooperative effort can be a success, or what are the challenges for the Quad you see for it to navigate so that it can actually achieve its goals?
Yeah, I mean that's always there, right? So when it was actually conceptualized, everyone thought it was more of a very military and security related alliance countering China. And I mean, they've gone on record and said that it is not the case, and they want to kind of cooperate in other fields, which is fine and which is actually much appreciated. But the thing is, signaling intent and actually kind of taking it forward is something that it is the responsibility of all four countries. So we do not know if it will actually work out. But I guess we can look at the positives, like let's say the semiconductor initiative, which was actually started by the four countries. I mean, that is something that it was not expected during the first conceptualization of Quad, but in the end, it kind of proved that they can do it, and they use whatever comparative advantages they had to counter China's rise, or let's say China's wanting to get into the semiconductor supply chain and dominate it. So in that way, I think even biotech is just a place where they have to figure out specific areas of research and work that they can actually make an impact in. And if they do that, it can work. But again, as you said, there are so many challenges, right? It's not just it is never going to be a breeze for all of them to just say we're going to do this and not have any challenges. Let's just say with respect to even just vaccines, right? So there is so many intellectual property rights associated with vaccine research and data sharing, and especially in the field of medical records and diseases. So that can actually kind of be like a very major roadblock for these countries to come together on vaccine research and work together. And even let's say in with respect to climate change or anything else, right? So they have the national emissions of all four countries. I mean, especially India and US are huge, and they kind of as you said, there exists disparities in the discourses related to funding of climate change mitigation and how each country plans to tackle climate change and stuff like that. So that is always going to be there. And if you can see that there is tussles over gene editing regulations across countries, with some countries saying it should not be regulated in a very major way and left to the scientific community itself, but some countries taking a more hard stand and saying it should be regulated so that it should not misuse the benefits and it might result in more detriment than actually positive. So in that way, I guess there are certain inherent challenges that these countries will face if they plan to chalk out a well-rounded plan for biotech cooperation. But there is nothing that should stop them, and they should kind of figure out a way to move past these challenges. That's it.
So, on this hopeful note, we are going to wrap up our today's episode of All Things Policy. Thank you for listening in. See you next time.
Thanks, Shrey. It was nice to have this conversation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
உங்களுக்கு தமிழ் கதைகள் கேட்க ரொம்ப பிடிக்குமா? அப்படின்னா கதை பாட்காஸ்ட்ல ஒவ்வொரு திங்கட்கிழமை, புதன்கிழமை, வெள்ளிக்கிழமைகள்ல வெளியாகிற தமிழ் கிளாசிக்கல் நாவல்களை உங்களுக்கு புரியுற தமிழ்ல கேட்டுக்கிட்டே இருங்க. இத IVM பாட்காஸ்ட் ஹோஸ்ட் பண்றாங்க. கேளுங்க கேட்டுக்கிட்டே இருங்க.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.